G'day jabronis, it is the Verd, back with you again. Welcome here to some more Pokemon TCG, not gameplay today. Today is purely designed for discussion. And when I say that, I am going to be sitting here for God knows how long this video is going for. My plan is just to keep talking until I feel like every single point has been made. So I'm going to be discussing Single Strike as a whole, not just Urshifu, Single Strike as a whole. I'm going to show you all the cards the Single Strike has to offer, and I'm going to show you the decks that might be good, might not be good, and I'll finish, I guess, by showing you the deck that I'd probably just recommend right now for what you're trying to do, right? So this is going to be an in-depth discussion into a lot of decks that I've personally built. I've had other people look into and try, because when Single Strike first came out, I was super excited about this deck, right? I thought this was going to be like a super awesome deck and was going to be insane in the meta, and obviously it has quite considerably flopped in terms of the meta. One of the reasons is the popularity of Psychic decks, especially things like Mewtwo and Dragapult, make it very hard for Urshifu. You have to run Jirachi GX to have a chance against those decks. Mewtwo is the most annoying factor. I think if Mewtwo didn't exist in the format, Single Strike Urshifu could be tier 1, because what it means is you don't have to run Jirachi. You can replace Jirachi with a Tyranitar V, which completely deals with the Dragapult matchup pretty much on its own. But yeah, the fact that Mewtwo exists is the worst part for Single Strike Urshifu. It doesn't have the tools like, say, a Rapid Strike Urshifu to run the net list, although we'll see about that. But yeah, right now it is not the best deck. However, what Single Strike Urshifu has going for it is it gets stronger with every set that is released, and when rotation occurs, it is going to be one of the best decks in the format. So what I kind of want to do for you guys now is give you a bit of a crash course into what we currently have to work with, and some of the ideas that you can make out of that. From my own experience, I have put a lot of time and effort into Single Strike to try and make it good. I will put my hand up and say I fully accept it's not good right now, and you know what, that's okay. Some decks are not good straight away, and they become the best decks in the format. So this is me kind of giving you that insight. So what we're going to first do is just look into all the Single Strike cards that we currently have access to, and I'm going to explain them all. Like, if they're good, if they're used, if they're bad, all that stuff, right? So let's begin with the main flagship Pokemon, Single Strike Urshifu V. 220 HP is completely fine for V. Laser Focus is a fantastic attack. So this allows you to search your deck for up to 2 basic fighting energies, and attach them to this Pokemon. Then you shuffle your deck. This is a fantastic option for going second. It means that you can have this Urshifu completely set up when you're going second, and it can set up for the VMAX to do an attack, or it can just set up for you to go for Impact Blow, which is considerably good damage for the Urshifu to be throwing out, which is really solid. Yeah, Laser Focus is very good. Impact Blow, 180. It's basically Brave Blade, but a little bit less damage. But there is a way that Urshifu can curve the damage in the future. But that's just a basic overview of Urshifu. Not much else really to say about it there. We're going to move on to the VMAX, the Big Kahuna. So the VMAX has pretty good HP, and its first attack it's 3 colors and does 100 damage. Doesn't seem like much, but there are ways that it becomes very useful. I'll kind of go into those a bit later on. But yeah, it's a pretty middling attack for 3 energy, and then for 4 energy, you do 270 damage, and you discard all energy from this Pokemon, and the attack's damage isn't affected by effects on your opponent's active. You might be a bit curious about what that last kind of part of the wording means. Basically, that means that Pokemon like Zamazenta, Decidueye, those things, they will get hit by Gmax 1 blow. Pokemon are not going to be protected from Gmax 1 blow. Gmax 1 blow also removes certain effects like Metal Goggles. It stops Full Metal Wall, so it means that Luke Metal always gets one shot by this. You also break through things like stone fighting energy, so in the matchup against Colossal, you can kind of punch through that pretty nicely. And yeah, the only downside of it though, as you saw, is discard all energy from this Pokemon. So it's a really cool attack, but you do lose all your energy in the process, which does suck. So there are ways to combat that though, but that's basically the two flagship attackers. They then released this guy, Houndoom. So the Houndoom is pretty awesome. He has an ability, Single Strike Raw, that allows you to search your deck for a Single Strike energy card and attach it to one of your Single Strike Pokemon, then you shuffle your deck. So if you do it this way, you have to put 2 damage counters on the Pokemon. So Houndoom is our energy acceleration method. So as we saw, the Urshifu discards all the energies, but Houndoom can search energies to put back onto the Urshifu to let it attack again. So that's really solid. Definitely one of the most crucial cards in any single strike deck because of the fact that it can accelerate energy for you. The other big attacker that it has at its disposal is Tyranitar V. It's definitely up there as one of my favorite cards printed. I have a very limited TCG knowledge though, but man, this card is fun. So, Cragalanche does 60 damage. Doesn't make a whole lot, but we'll get to that. It does mill the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. This does create really good scenarios against like mill decks and whatnot, where if they only have a couple of cards left in deck, you effectively just mill them and they lose the game, which is nice. And Single Strike Crush is 4 energies, does 240, and you have to mill the top 4 cards of your deck. So a bit hefty, but there are ways that you can be rewarded for doing that we're going to get into now. I think is the right time to explain it. So Houndoom can search in energy. The energy is Single Strike energy. And basically this can be attached to only a Single Strike Pokemon. When it's attached, it provides either fighting or dark energy. And if it's attached to a Pokemon, their attacks do 20 more damage. Notice that this is not just affecting, it's not a once per turn. So if you have 4 Single Strike energies attached to a Pokemon, they will stack. So to give you an idea of like the damage output that's created from that, theoretically, a Tyranitar can do 320 damage as a 1-prizer. Urshifu V can do up to 260, and Urshifu V Max can hit 350, which theoretically allows it to one-shot every single Pokemon in the current metagame. Because even things like Dragapult and Togekiss will die to a fully boosted G-Max 1 blow. So that's pretty good. It's pretty good, right? But then you're thinking, okay, so you have the Houndoom that can accelerate the energy, you have the Urshifu that can attack. What happens when the energies hit the bin? Well, they thought of that. This is the Urn of Vitality. So this card allows you to get 2 Single Strike energies from your discard back into your deck. This allows you to recur the Houndoom's effect and can completely set up an Urshifu VMAX to attack again. It is insane. I love it. It's a very, very powerful card. On to some other cool Pokemon lines. We have Mankey, which evolves into Primeape. The Primeape, I don't really own any of this card because it's not very good, but it's interesting. Field Crush is not a very good attack, but Sneering Mad Strike is fascinating, I suppose. This attack does 50 damage for each of your benched Pokemon that have any damage counters on them. There are cute ways you could make a deck out of this. Like, I think I contemplated a Primeape Donphan deck, because Donphan has the Earthquake attack that damages everything on your bench, and then Primeape can just go in after that. I wasn't sure how good that would be, though, so it may be revisited in the future, but for now, I don't think Primeape is that good of a card, unfortunately. Interesting for sure, but not super good. A card that I've actually been testing with a bit recently, and I've kind of enjoyed, is Stonjourner. Lance Pulse can actually become a really solid attack. If there's a stadium in play, it does 30 more damage, so with 2 Single Strike energies attached, you're doing 100. Even with 1 Single Strike energy attached, that means that you can Gust and kill a Dedenne if a stadium's in play, which is super nice. If there's no stadium in play though, then even with 2 Single Strike energies, you're not killing Dedenne or Crobat, so you have to be careful about that. But Giga Hammer is actually quite good. Although it's only 120 damage for 3 energy, you have to think of it kind of like how Giratina used to be, and that, you know, the Houndoom is trying to be the Malamar. It's definitely not the same, but there is a really cool idea that I think could be used between the two, and I will discuss that in a deck a bit later on. We do have a Tepig, Pignite, and Emball line. Not the craziest Fighting Fury stance is interesting. This can allow you to ramp your damage very, very highly. However, I will say I don't think it's a very good card. There's only one effective way to bring this Pokemon out, and I don't think it's very good. So I would kind of keep an eye out for Emboar, because maybe one day it'll be good, but for now, he's pretty lackluster, I would say. The last Pokemon that we have access to is Mawile. This was a fantastic card in pre-release, I'll tell you that right now, because Piercing Strike was sick. One-shot at everything, it was great. Powerful Vice, sure, Paralysis. Piercing Strike did 100 and wasn't affected by weakness or resistance. This is not a very good card. It's cool, I guess, but it's not very good at all. There are much better options for you to attack with. There are no Fairy types for you to hit for weakness. Yeah, it's just not good. So, we're going to go on to another... We're going to go on to probably... Up there with Emboar as one of the more disappointing cards right now, but I will say this card has considerable potential depending on what is printed in the future, and that is Single Strike style Mustard. So, you can... It's basically like Archie's Ace in the Hole or Maxie's Hidden Ball Trick. You can only play this card if it is the last card in your hand. Search your deck for a Single Strike Pokemon and put it onto your bench, then shuffle your deck. If you search your deck this way, draw 5 cards. So this is good and bad. This is good because you could get any Single Strike Pokemon. So you could get Houndoom to immediately use the ability. You could get a Shifu VMAX to just have a body on the board. You could do it to grab Emboar, and this is the best way to search out Emboar is by using this Mustard. The downside is that we have a meta right now where Ultra Ball doesn't exist, and it's really, really hard to actually thin your hand down to literally nothing. We have Quick Ball, we have Comms, we have ways to do it, but it's not like consistent. You do have a Duskull from Cosmic Eclipse that can be helpful, but it's still just like not really good enough. It's an interesting concept, but Mustard eventually I think will become good, but for now, like, I don't own any copies, same with Primate, just don't really think it's got the legs right now. A supporter that's very interesting is Bruno, in the sense that it's a Single Strike supporter, but it's a very good universal supporter. So shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 4 cards. If any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn, draw 7 cards instead. So it's a slightly buffed Cynthia if you have a Pokemon knocked out on your turn. So this can be really solid, honestly. It's a bit lackluster if if none of your Pokemon were knocked out the last turn. You're kind of going potentially negative, which is not great. But in terms of Single Strike supporters, it's pretty solid. And if you're running like the 1 prize attackers, I think this is a fantastic addition that should always be in your lists. Now we're getting on to the real good stuff, okay? Like, I've already discussed a lot of good stuff. So here's the stadium. This is Tower of Darkness. Once during each player's turn, that player must draw 2 cards. In order to use effect, that player must discard a Single Strike card from their hand. So obviously works very fantastically for our decks. There are so many Single Strike cards that you can just discard and then you get a +2, effectively. Well, technically it's a +1, but, you know, there are certain situations, like if you have 1 Single Strike energy and discard and you tower away a second one to draw 2 and then use Earn to put the 2 back in, it's pretty good value. Yeah, incredibly good card, really just solid for searching as well. Sorry, not searching, just drawing through the deck. It's just fantastic, so I'm a big fan of Tower of Darkness. The last card we have here is Single Strike Scroll of Scorn. This is a tool card that the Archetype got. The Single Strike Pokemon it's attached to can use this attack. So for 1 fighting energy, you can use Furious Anger, which does 10 plus 10 more damage for each damage counter. Remember that you put 2 damage counters on each time you use Houndoom's ability. So you can stack damage pretty quickly with Scroll to make it a very intimidating force for your opponent to have to go up against. So I think this is a fantastic card. I think it is incredibly solid for this deck, and I would run usually 1 to 2 copies in every list that I use, depending on what cards I'm running. For the reason why this is also amazing is because you attach it to the VMAX, right? And then you get hit by, say, like a Zacian, they Brave Blade you. With the Scroll attached, you just attach an energy and you one-shot a Zacian back. You do 240 back to a Zacian if you've taken no damage at all. So that's pretty insane when you think about it. So that's the baseline of all of the cards. Well, the Single Strike cards that we have access to right now. We do get a lot more in future sets that are going to make the decks a whole lot better. And like I've said, when rotation hits, things will get a whole lot better. But for now, that was just a quick like little 15-minute explanation of all the cards that you have to work with. And now what I'm going to do is go into some deck ideas. So what I'm going to give you is like the most basic, simple version of the deck, and honestly, probably the one that I would recommend the most in running. And this is what I call single strike beginners. This is a list that I will usually bring to my locals in Adelaide because I know this will work. There's a lot of other decks I'm going to show you today that are cool, but they are not anywhere near as consistent as this deck. And the really cool thing about this deck, guys, especially the one that I've built here, is that when rotation occurs, literally the only changes you have to make is you drop Dedenne, Jirachi, Mew, and Pokemon Communication. And you put in an extra Crobat, 2 Tyrannitars, and 3 Evolution Incense. And that's it. They are the only changes that need to be made to this deck to make it meta relevant consistently. Whereas there's a lot of decks right now in the meta that are going to lose a lot of crucial cards and not be as good. And that's what Urshifu has going for it, is that all of the good cards that make it function are not going to get rotated. So it's not good yet, but this is the appealing part. So this basically, like the only, I guess, tech cards that you may not know, Crobat, put it down on your bench, you draw until you have 6, pretty solid. Dedenne, discard, draw 6. Jirachi removes Psychic weakness for any Pokemon in play that have it. So Jirachi wouldn't be weak to Psychic. Urshifu's are weak to Psychic, so they remove that. Mew wouldn't be weak to Psychic. Mew is also here for bench barrier. This stops Rapid Strike Urshifu, Inteleon, Cramorant, things like that. So that's the basic Pokemon line. Without throwing in any random text or anything else, that is the baseline of Pokemon that you need for this deck to function. And then on top of that, you're basically maxing out all of your search options. So Quick Ball, very strong. 4 switch cards with 2 switch, 2 balloon. 4 earn, 4 tower. Decent supporter line. You could maybe bump it up a bit with Marnie, but I don't think you need to. 2 scroll because it's a good tower discard early as well. And then 4 single strike energies and 5 basic fighting because it means that your laser focus is probably guaranteed to go off a lot more consistently. There is not a whole lot to this deck. There's not a whole lot I need to explain about this deck. This is like a list that I would just recommend if you are looking to learn how to play Single Strike Urshifu. You've never really played the deck, but you're like, hey, Sam, I really like what you're doing here. Can I use this list? I'm like, absolutely. If you're going to use a list, to begin with, like, obviously, once you learn the deck, there are a lot of other cool options that I would happily recommend to you guys. But as a base point, I think this is the best way to start. These are effectively like the single strike training wheels of the deck. It teaches you the core strategies that you want to achieve and does it in the most consistent way possible. And I don't think you could ask for anything more than that. So this is definitely what I recommend to start with, but now we're going to get into some more interesting stuff. So that was my initial ideas for the list, and it worked pretty well. Nobody was getting really results with it because obviously the meta is a bit rough for Urshifu, but then I talked to Christian Hasbani, and he came up with this list. So this was really cool for a little bit, I'm not going to lie. He, myself, and Stefan, who you might know from my Twitter, we really got on board with Kricketune V as a support Pokemon. Kricketune was really, really solid because when it's in your when it's just in play, you can draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. Any turn you want, but when it's in the active spot, you get to draw until you have 4. So it was a good out to like reset stamp. You chuck an air balloon on it, and it was really solid. The other thing that Christian wanted to do was not run Jirachi and say that Dragapult is winnable with T-Tar and so is Mewtwo. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. It wasn't as much of an answer as we needed, and it meant that Urshifus were very easy prey for Mewtwo's in a lot of matchups. The rest of the list was really cool though. It did not run Marnie. It was just a very heavy research boss line, again focusing on that high tower count, and it ran 6 switch cards with the inclusion of Escape Rope and Great Catcher. It meant that, you know, we could gust up things like Dedennes and Crobats, well, mainly the Great Catcher was for Dedenne, to be able to get easy gust kills and then go from there. This worked pretty well. It unfortunately was a bit clunkier. It did lead to some pretty cool plays. Like Great Catcher and Escape Rope are both very good momentum swinging cards, and Kricketune was a really good failsafe. However, over time we accepted that T-Tar, while it is an amazing Pokemon and is long-term a very good thing to be picking up, Jirachi was just better in this style of deck. But Again, another cool idea that you can run. You can like mix up a lot of these switching cards, like you know, Escape Rope, Air Balloon, Switch. They're all fantastic options that you have at your disposal. Moving on to there. Now, this is probably like my little baby, my pet project. I one day sat down and was like, man, I want to build something really cool for Single Strike that nobody's thought of. And I was like, okay, what is the cool thing that Single Strike could do that could surprise people? And I thought about the fact that the cool thing with Tower of Darkness is that if you stack your deck, you use Tower of Darkness and you're guaranteed to draw into the card. And I was like, okay, well, Smooth Over Makago doesn't exist anymore, but we did have Mewtwo from Unbroken Bonds that has Mind Report. It lets you put a supporter back on the top of your deck, and then you can use Tower to draw into that supporter. I was like, wow, okay, that's pretty cool. It's better than Eldegoss because you don't have to give out 2 prizes for it. And I was like, oh, but it would be nice to be able to use Mewtwo more than once. So I was like, okay, what if I use Scoop Up Net? And I was like, alright, well, if I'm going to use Scoop Up Net, let's commit to the Scoop Up Net. And this is Netfu. This is probably my cleanest version, I would say, of Netfu. It is a monstrous hybrid, taking all the good parts of Scoop Up Net and all the best parts of Single Strike Urshifu and trying to make them gel into one. On the initial list, I was running Stone Fighting Energy. I think I ran 4 Stone Fighting Energy and 3 Basic Fighting. That was a mistake. I think the correct count for energy in the future for any deck is 4 Single Strike, 5 Basic Fighting. That just feels correct in every sense of it. But the basic premise of this list was that Nets allows you to manipulate damage with Zigzagoon, slow down decks like Dragapult with Giratina, as well as using the Mind Report like we discussed. The other cool thing to note is that Houndoom can be Scoop Up Netted. So if you have 1 Houndoom in play, example, you have 2 Houndours in play. You evolve 1 into a Houndoom, use Single Strike Raw. You Scoop Up Net that Houndoom and evolve the other Houndour into the Houndoom you just scooped back up to be able to use Single Strike Raw again, which is pretty freaking solid. The rest of the cards are pretty self-explanatory. There's, again, nothing else that's new. Focuses around Scoop Up Net, which puts a Pokemon that isn't a V or Pokemon GX back into your hand. It's all base Pokemon. There was a debate as to whether Jirachi would be good in this list, but I decided to put Marnie in over Jirachi because I preferred having a lot more draw outs, which ended up being pretty successful. A lot of people say this is the best Single Strike list that's been made. It is arguable. I will say that this is probably... Man, it's debatable. I would say this is probably the best list, but it requires the biggest brain. This is not an easy list to use in the slightest. With Scoop Up Nets, there is a lot of intricacies that you can create to be able to win games, and you have to really think about your resources. The plus of the consistent Single Strike list was that you know your resources pretty well, and you have maximum count, so you can afford to be a bit more aggro. With this one, you're on a tightrope for sure. Like, only running 2 VMAX is very dangerous, but I really prioritize opening with an Urshifu V to the point where I'd rather run 4 of that and 2 of the VMAX, because I know that with this list, I can just use 1 VMAX and probably win the game with that 1 VMAX. So, because of that, I think that once you learn how to use Single Strike, give this list a try and let me know how it goes for you, because I think on paper this is the best Single Strike list that I've come up with so far. I'd love to be able to fit in a copy of Tyranitar into this list. I just think that it like shores up the Dragapult matchup, but again, the only reason you do that is if you drop Jirachi, and I think that you don't. Dragapult is winnable though by also attacking with Houndoom due to Dragapult having Dark Weakness, so you can work around it. This is like my baby project, and this is currently the list that I like the most when it comes to this baby project. It just works, guys. I don't have any other way to explain the list. It just works, and I'm a real big fan of it. I would recommend giving this a try. It is super cool. I would definitely recommend, if you don't have experience with single strike Urshifu, to try the beginner list first, and then this is like the advanced list. But I think that this has the most versatility of play to allow you to deal with as many situations as possible. For sure, this is like just such a nuts list. I love it a lot. Moving on now to a couple of lists that I've seen my friends run that I thought I'd just kind of highlight. I've given one of these a slight edit just for personal preference, and one I haven't edited just because I want to kind of discuss it. But we'll start with this one. So my buddy Ruben Mendoza decided to build a really cool variant of Urshifu focusing around Rose. So Rose allows you to attach 2 basic energies to one of your VMAXs, and then you discard your entire hand. So the premise was that you use Rose in combination with Cricketune to be able to then draw into a fresh hand after that again. And by accelerating 2 energies to Urshifu, it means you just need to attach for turn and use Houndoom once, and you have an attack online every time. So if there's 2 Houndooms in play, and you Rose onto Urshifu, as long as you have the single strike energies in deck, you're looking pretty good. I decided to change around his list a little bit. He was running some weird search lines. I just decided, since he's running the Cinccino package as well with Make Do, that I maxed out Level Ball, Common Quick Ball. I think if you're going to run the Cinccino engine, you need to max out those lines. I also put an extra Houndour and an extra Minccino because they are very crucial. I think he was running like a Capture Energy. I dropped that. And something else that I dropped. He was only running 1 Urn of Vitality. I upped that to 2 because I think that running it, like getting at least 1 Urn off with this deck is pretty important. He was running 4 Rose, 1 Research. I made it 3-2 because Rose is good, but it's not that good. I dropped the Power Pad because it's not that great. Like, realistically, you shouldn't have to discard too many good resources with Research. You should be able to play the game a little bit slower due to having a lot of 1 prizes that you can work around. But yeah, like, you have Ordinary Rod to get things back in the deck, which is pretty cool. The Rose strat is interesting, right? You can set up a pretty good board, and you can have good recursion. The issue is obviously that, like, you live by the Rose, you die by the Rose, and by only running a 2 Houndoom line as well as only 2 Urn of Vitality, you are not going to consistently get off the strategy as much as you want to, which is why I think it didn't see a whole lot of success when it was being used. But I think it's a really cool idea. I think Rose is a fantastic card. Whether it's fantastic for this deck, it is yet to be seen. However, I do really like the interaction of Rose plus Cricketune. I think that's a really cool idea and definitely something that people should use in their Rose decks in the future. Next up, we have Sammy. She recently got, I think, top 8 at the Brisbane Open with this list that I found pretty curious. It was a pretty straightforward list. It was running 2 of the T-Tar. Great. I love the T-Tar. It was running no Jirachi and no Mew, and then was running 2 Cape of Toughness. So Cape of Toughness has a couple of really cool interactions with this deck. Cape, when it's attached to Houndooms, means that you're not as... Why is my... Okay, cool. I was looking at, like, up there, my Camtasia was frozen. I'm like, what are you doing? But Cape of Toughness allows your Houndooms to not be killed by G-Max Rapid Flow, which is nice. And Cape of Toughness also means that you can attach this to T-Tar and it becomes a lot bulkier. You can attach them to a single strike Urshifu and it becomes a lot bulkier. I don't think you'd ever attach it to the Urshifu. I can understand this on the Houndooms or the T-Tar though. I don't mind that. It's pretty cool. Only running 3 Urn but running 4 Houndooms seems incorrect, but each of their own. Still running the same search lines and it's running 2 Great Ball, 2 Com. I still think 4 Com is always correct there. Energy line is pretty good. It's a little bit fat, I would say. Only changes that I really make to this, honestly, looking at it, is again, I don't think the captures are super necessary. What I don't like about Capture Energy is only a good card when you go first, on your very first turn. That is the one turn when I think Capture Energy is ever good. Because you think about the game state, right? If you go first and you attach it, brilliant. If you go second and you attach it, you can't laser focus to an Urshifu because it needs the basic fighting, right? So, pretty bad there. You always want to laser focus if you can, right? Because it puts pressure on it, forces your opponent to actually do something with their turn. If you just sit and hope the Urshifu doesn't get hit, then you're in way more trouble there. You have to be aggressive with this deck if you want to succeed. So, yeah, that's it. And then also, when you get to the turn after that, when you're looking to attack, you're not looking to set up another Houndour on the bench. By that time when you're attacking, you should have everything you need in play already. Like, on the turn, when you get to declare your first attack, which should be laser focus, or say you're going first, you've attached, and then you're going to go for impact blow, you should have 1 to 2 Houndour in play by that stage. They should have been prioritized. So for me, I would drop all the capture energies. I would put in 2 more basic fighting as per usual. I would then put in 1 more air balloon and 1 more urn. If you don't want to run Jirachi or Mew, that's fine. I'm not going to say that's good or bad. It is honestly your call. But I will say that not having Tower is a little bit dicey because your draw support is a little bit weaker. Especially because like when you use Urn, you can use Urn into Tower to be able to draw into a single strike energy when you need it. Can be pretty nice. And I also think that while Jirachi isn't necessary if you're going to go with the aggro T-Tar play, Mew can be pretty solid still in some game states. But I understand that with the capes, you should be fine. So pretty cool list, I'm not going to lie. I dig it. I think the capes are a really cool idea and definitely something to consider in the future. Now we get on to the final list, one that I actually came up with recently and has garnered a bit of attention, which is my single strike Stonjourner list. I really like the premise of this because I remember this guy, John Healy, posted on Twitter about how he's like, man, I wish that this deck could be like Malamar used to be, but we don't really have any good one prize attackers. The best one that we have access to is this Stonjourner, which is still like relevant, right? If you have 2 single strike energies attached, Giga Hammer doing 160 does half hit pretty much every deck in the meta. So it's pretty damn good in that sense. And by running all these one prizes, it opens you up to running cool cards like Bruno, which sees a lot more play in a deck like this, which I really am a fan of. Some other interesting cards to note, like I said, we're running the Level Ball, which works super well with Cinccino, because it's 90 HP. So that's fantastic. Another card I'm running is the Mimikyu. This is basically in here to stop Cheryl and Malolana shenanigans. It doesn't stop a Pokemon that's in the active from being Cheryl, but it does stop benched Pokemon from being Cheryl, and it means that Malolana has no effect because the Pokemon is switched and then healed. So the moment it goes to the bench, it will not be able to have itself healed. So, really important card because Stonjourner... Oh, no, not you, Mew. We know what you do. Stonjourner half hits everything. But you're probably thinking like, okay, well, what if you pair against Dragapult? That seems pretty bad. Well, you do run that single copy of T-Tar to be able to deal with that matchup pretty fine. This has actually been a really fun list to play with. I honestly have had some really good games, and I have a lot of fun with it. The Cinccino engine plus the Houndooms, once you have like 2 of each in play, you can really easily get Stonjourners cooking. It's fantastic. Or if you have, like, say, 3 Houndours in play, you can always threaten a potential T-Tar knockout when your opponent's just not expecting it, which is fantastic. So this is a really cool, like, if you're looking for, like, the one prize single strike strategy, this is what I'd go with. You don't run Dede, you don't run Crobat or Jirachi. T-Tar is your only 2 prizer, and you only really run it for a few matchups. Like Draga, it's really important for, and also ADP. You really want it against ADP because you want to be able to use single strike Crush to kill their ADP after they knock you out, because usually ADP players will then have committed a Zacian as well as like a Crobat or a Dede. You can kill the Crobat or the Dede with Stonjourner, and then if you get the Houndoom set up by then, you can use Ordinary Rod to get back T-Tar to kill a Zacian, and that wins you the game, right? You win the prize trade. So that's definitely worth considering. It's a really fun list. I definitely need to do like a showcase video on it to show you how it works, but yeah, like Stonjourner is actually a very decent attacker, and oh, voice break from me. And I would definitely recommend it if you've never used the card before. Really cool idea. I really like it for like those people who enjoy those cool rogue one prize decks. This is probably the best one that Single Strike has to offer. There is contention that like when Chilling Reign comes out, Tauros is better than Stonjourner. I'm not 100% sure yet, because what Stonjourner really has going for it, by the way, guys, is the fact that it hits both Crobat and Dede for weakness, which means it's really easy to go up in the prize race with this. Like, I'd almost want to run more boss because of that, or like run Pokemon Catcher, but I also want it to be consistent, so it is what it is. But yes, out of like just a quick little, I guess, summary, again, at the end of the day, if you are just starting to play with Single Strike Urshifu, this is a list I would recommend, because it has all the core things that allow you to do single strike strategies. The issue with a lot of other decks in the meta right now is that there's not a lot of independent strategy happening through. Like, Rapid Strike Urshifu is not, pardon me, really running Octillery, Tower of Waters, Karina's Focus, pardon me, any of that stuff. It's focusing really on just, I'm just going to run Rapid Strike Urshifu V, Rapid Strike Urshifu V Max, and 4 Rapid Strike Energy. And I'm going to slap that into any deck I want. And it just works. Whereas Single Strike, what is good about it is its main strength comes from the archetypal cards that were provided for it. And that's what I like. It's a deck that actually uses the cards that were designed specifically for it to be good. And that's how most decks should be. I get that, like, obviously there are cards like Mewtwo that can be heavily teched out to deal with a lot of situations, but Urshifu is simplistic, it is incredibly powerful, and while it is not the most consistent or devastating deck due to the current metagame, it is a list that I would definitely, it is a deck that I would definitely consider investing in and preparing for the meta shift when it does occur. I mean, obviously we have like 3 months until the meta is actually going to change drastically. But in that 3 months, we do get some really awesome single strike cards. A lot of really good supporters like Karen's Conviction and Flannery. Some really cool attackers. We get the Tornadus, which is really cool. We get Gengar, which is insane. And like Slowking, Slowking is not bad. When all those cards come out, I'll probably do another discussion video. And as for a few of these decks that are on here, I will try and feature them in videos in the future. But I just kind of want to give you guys a base set of like all the single strike cards we have access to, what they do, and then the most effective ways to play them, because I know that when it comes to first starting out, those are the important things that people want to know. So yeah, hopefully you found this video informative. If you did, you know, like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff, and let me know what you thought of the video. I definitely like, oh, it's a bit of an understatement, I really like Single Strike Urshifu. I really believe that it has what it takes to be a top contender in the meta in time. It's not quite there yet, but it's ticking all the right boxes for me, and I really want to see it get there, guys. I'm like really wanting to see it get there. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I'm going to come back with some more Single Strike videos, hopefully in the future. But yeah, I'm the Verd. I'm out this bitch.